Hey guys, it it's been a little while since I made a podcast. Think it I think it might be about a month, maybe 3 weeks. I kind of couldn't really find any time to fit in to record it, even though it kind of doesn't really take much and there's not a lot of anything. Anyway, so I found time. Yay! Well done to me. So I kind of thought that I could again complain about episode interactive because it's my main source of grievement these days. So let's talk about it. Okay, so I've spoken about the issues of gems and how episode think all their readers are billionaires or something. So let's keep talking about this now. Let's talk about the fact that episode seem to be on a course to completely destroying their platform. And I could be wrong about this, of course. I mean, there will always be people who will pay. I mean, there are people who can afford these things. Of course they can, yes. But do I expect that your average 15-year-old, I mean, your normal run-of-the-mill 15-year-old, 15, 14, 16, is gonna spend their money, like, what little money? I mean, let's face it, right? You're a teenager. On endless gems for a reading app. And if you think about then how many writers there are in episode, there are hundreds. I mean, there are hundreds. I mean, there are so many. And if you think how many authors just one reader will read, it's not just one or two, it's a lot. How many gems are they buying exactly? Because episode hasn't devised a way so that the reader can earn enough gems back to use in each chapter of each story that they read. Because let's not forget that episode have introduced the algorithm now where stories without gems, stories where gems are not used, are not favored. So if you don't have gems in your story is not going to trend. And therefore less people will see your story, you'll get less reads, you'll make less money. And you know, I've said this before, I am not going to ever say, you know, you should be doing this just because you love writing, not because you want to get paid. I don't believe it. I've never believed that. If you put hard work into something, if you put your heart and your soul is, and let's face it, that's what writing is. I mean, some people do it for fun. I get that. I do it for fun too as well. But if you put time into something, if you put effort into something, and you are able to earn from it, then I have no objection, and I will always be in favor of absolutely getting your due at the end. So now episode have made it mandatory, almost. I mean, it essentially is mandatory if you want to get reads on your story, if you want to get your story seen, it's mandatory to put gems into your chapter. And the more gems, the more people will pay. Let's take, for instance, my story, okay? Because let's use it as an example. It was getting slightly less, not a lot less, but slightly less reads than it would usually do, because as I was putting them out, I wasn't aware of the new algorithm and the gems. I was always adamant that I didn't want to put gems into the story because I know readers don't want gems in your story because it just ruins the whole experience and it just makes everything about, well, money. So I was adamant I would never put gems into the story. I was very happy with that. I'd written short stories that had some gems in some chapters, because I just wanted to like challenge myself a little bit and see if I could do well thought out gem questions. I mean, I read the episode original stories and I realized that actually you could just put anything as a gem. Anything as a gem. And it's okay. Because episode don't follow their own rules. So I was getting a little bit less because of but we weren't far off. And as soon as I started putting gems into the story, suddenly I find myself in the trending, in the top 100, in the top 50, with the same amount of reads that I had where I was in constantly suspended between 130 and 150, whether I updated or not. So your story is entirely based on gems. That's it. It's always based on gems. It's not about reads anymore. Because I had the same, but when I put the gems in, that was when it began to do something. That was when it began to rise. And now every chapter I put out, it may slip from the top 100, but every chapter I update and I put more gems in, we go back up to the top 50 again. And of course, at this point, there's no point in updating daily or even a couple of times a week, because the people who are reading your stories haven't got that many gems, so you have to update less, so you get less reads because you're updating less. Now, your average reader only has a limited amount of gems, of course, unless they buy them, but they are reading so many authors, and all those authors are mostly probably putting gems into their stories because that's what they have to do. That's what they have to do to get seen. That's what they have to do to stay relevant. Episode have created a system now where they get richer because they are forcing their targeted audience, which is like anything between 12 years old, it's in their app, to spend more money on gems to put into chapters for authors to get seen. And I get the beta emails all the time about new ways to put more gems into stories. I got one last week that I completely ignored because it's utterly ridiculous and it's just insane. You want people to pay gems to read further chapters. You want those chapters to be filled with gems. The more gems, the better, because the more people will spend. But they are reading other authors' stories as well. So when it comes to your story, they might not have the gems to use. So unless they buy the gems, they're not going to use the gems. Therefore, your story is not going to be... Episode have really formulated a way, in their pursuit of greed, they have really formulated a way to destroy their entire platform. And it had the potential to be one of the best reading apps around. But they have completely, utterly destroyed it. And I mean that. They've destroyed it. And they are content to follow this path of complete annihilation. Because what you're doing then is you're taking those writers who previously made a living from your app. I mean, it's very feasible to make a living from Episode. Episode Interactive is essentially YouTube, but for visual stories. That's what it is. And YouTubers make livings from YouTube. It is very feasible to make a living from Episode. I know because I did it. That was how I started my course of becoming just a full-time writer from Episode. I mean, I will say this negatively about Episode because, I do believe that Episode could have been great It could have been amazing. It could have been wonderful, but it went down the path of always needing more, always wanting more, more, more. And when you market your app to 12 and plus, that's pre-teens. Yes, adults read it. Of course they do. Of course they do. A lot of my reader base is adults. But you can't expect 12-year-olds to have this much money. We are still in a pandemic. Unemployment has been the highest it has ever been this last year. In the UK, it's been 2 million more. 2 million people made unemployed due to the pandemic and due to the lockdowns and the severe restrictions placed upon businesses that have had to end because there's just no way that the owners can keep them going. High street businesses collapsed and people have lost their livelihoods. It is insane that episode keep pursuing this path when they apparently think that their readers are billionaires. I don't quite understand the mentality of this, and I don't really understand who their advisors are. Writers know what their readers want. Writers know, and if you want to know how to pay your writers more, instead of inventing ways so that you can penalize your readers, because that's what episodes do, and they don't really give the writers very much more than they already do, so it's just all a farcical joke. I mean, implement a way that bring in more ads. Simple. Take a message from YouTube's book, bring in more ads. Make it feasible for writers to put ads in the story. Let them choose. You know, the longer the story, the more ads. You know, if you watch a TV show, you get ad breaks. Let the writer choose the ad breaks, like you do on YouTube. You don't need to penalize the reader to give the writer more, which is just an illusion because all you're doing is giving the company more. And yes, I know it's a company, it's a business, it's going to make money. I get it. But penalizing the reader, all you're doing is turning people away. That's all you're doing, is turning people away. And this is an app that isn't very inclusive in the first place. So, I mean, do we need to talk about the fact that episode has never, bar one very, very short story, which has kind of disappeared. Is it still up? I don't know, I've not seen it. It's not in the episode story section anyway that I can see. Have they ever featured an LGBTQ story written by an LGBTQ author and publicized it in the way that they do their other stories? The answer is no. They do their choose your gender story, but those aren't LGBTQ stories. They aren't catered to LGBTQ audiences. Those are copy and paste versions of the straight version, but with the pronouns changed. That's all they are. And cool, that's all well and good. But the fact is, see, this is down to the writers again. Writers know their audience. Writers know what their audience wants. A sapphic writer will know what their sapphic audience wants. Will know the experience more. Will know... Okay, so this is I didn't want to make a long video, but, you know, we got to about 15 minutes on why episode are completely destroying their app. I mean, I don't know what they're doing. Pocket Gems are going crazy. I don't know who is making the decisions. They're not right ones. And trust me when I say they send emails all the time to writers. Tell us your experience, tell us this, but they never listen. So what's the point? And only the writers know what their readers want. Episode seems to think that they know, but they don't. It's crazy. Just like when people say, we want hour-long episodes. Write hour-long chapters for me, please. And I never do. Because nobody's reading those chapters. Nobody has the attention span to read a chapter that is an hour long. I hate those chapters, they're horrible. And stories like that never have long retention, so I will try and put another one of these out next time. I want to talk about the choice of stories that episode choose to make original content, which is kind of interesting for their 12 plus audience. So let's talk about that. And I think I want to compare it to the other app I write for, which is a lot more grown up. Yeah, the age is different, but I can write the word breast in a sentence and not get called on it. Yeah. I'm afraid to write the word breast in episode because it is inappropriate content. Last week, episode sent me an email that they had reviewed the story, and calling someone a pussy, even though it was censored, was inappropriate because it was in a context that was sexual. And it wasn't. It wasn't. I don't know what episode think a sexual scenario is, but it's definitely not what they assume. I don't know. Anyway, so I'm gonna say goodbye because I don't know what else to say. And if you liked the video, if you did, press subscribe, a like, I don't know, if you want to. If you don't, hey, have a nice day. And I'll see you next time. Bye.